All right. Well, welcome to the webinar, Where Are the Funds? Making your golf club, making your club profitable. We're going to have a great webinar. We have some fantastic stuff to go over in regards to finance, regards to accounting. It's all the stories. I love finance. I love accounting. We're numbers people, and it's all the stories and decisions that get you, that ultimately shows up on some sort of financial metric. And we're going to help you with your club to make it a lot more profitable than how it is right now. So when we go through everything, really, our agenda that we have today, excuse me, let me just backtrack a little bit and say who we are. We are Up to Par and Taylor Hospitality. We were founded back in 2009. We live here in beautiful Lexington, Virginia. Our corporate office is in Lexington, Virginia. We have clubs really all across the East Coast and into the Texas area, down into Florida, up into Virginia, West Virginia. Sean is up there in Northern Virginia, and I'm down here in Lexington, Virginia. We roughly have about 275 associates that work with us each and every day that really make it happen. Our contact number, as you can see there, is 540-464-4653. You can check us out online, uptoparmanagement.com or taylorhospitality.com as well. There's links to either side of us there. We run and operate and manage golf clubs in general, hotels, boutique hotels, as well as with fabulous restaurants that are located into the hotels, and that's the Taylor Hospitality component of it. We really believe in food and how it can make or break the club financials, as well as the club experience for members and their guests. We take care of all the human resources component, where you are in the people business. We'll talk a little bit more about that, as well as the financials, the reporting, as everything that's going through the club. And the beauty of it is generating more sales through fantastic marketing for your club. If you're not interested in engaging with us in regards to completely operating your club, we consult. We give you great roadmaps and plans for you to be able to implement. We will go and evaluate your property, whether it's on the business development, sales and marketing, agronomy, or overall club operations. And we have helped tens of hundreds of clubs over the course of our career to become better and better and become more profitable for their membership, for their board of directors. So upcoming webinars is really, we have one that's coming down the pipeline February 13th. It's about culture and training, and we're really into the people business of things. And really, you're only as great as your best server at your property, at your club. And let that sink in. You are only as great as your greatest server. That's as good as you're going to be. And so you really have to make sure that the people that you have on your bus, on your team, are 100% engaged and pointed in the right direction financially, as well as the experience at your property. We have upcoming webinars. Follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn if you want to register for some of the next webinars that are coming down the pipeline. We have a variety of different club and hotel webinars that we try to push out at least monthly out into the public, where you can learn how we go about doing it. So my name is Sean Taylor. I've come up through resorts and through clubs, building golf courses, you name it. I mean, there's probably not one thing at a resort that I haven't done, whether it's work on a dozer to build golf courses, to plunge in toilets in the hotels, to work on all the financials, and really to see all the stories. I really got my degree there at Elon, and have taken a variety of different MBA classes, whether it's at Darden or Northwestern, to help me become better. And really started Up to Par back in 2009 for one sole purpose, was to positively influence others. And who those others were is a variety of people. It's not only our associates that work with us each and every day, but it's also our clients, that we serve each and every day, whether it's the board of directors or the owners of clubs or the owners of hotels or investment groups of the hotels that we run, but it's positively impact them in a variety of different ways, whether it's financially as well as experientially. So I am happy to be here. I'm thrilled to be here because this is a topic that both Sean and myself, the two Seans, you got Sean squared here, that we are vehemently passionate about, and you'll see as we get through this webinar. So Sean, want to talk a little bit about you?
Yeah, my name is Sean Funk. I've worked with Sean Taylor now since 2005. Hard to believe it's been that long. I'm the Director of Operations for Up to Par, as well as the Director of Operations at a facility that we manage here in Northern Virginia. I, too, came up through the club industry, both resorts and private country clubs, and did go to school at Penn State and got my professional golf management degree, or recreation park tourism management degree, with an emphasis on professional golf management, and have been, loving the industry ever since. And working with people is something that I really enjoy. And let me tell you, this webinar here, the financial side of it, may be the most important thing for a department manager, general manager, or somebody who's owning a club to truly understand. Because if you don't understand it, it's easy to go backwards fast.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's jump into the webinar. It's where are the funds? Where's the fun? Well, the fun is in the funds. It's, it's in there. So it's kind of like ragu. It's in there. And so, we're going to talk a lot about different aspects of accounting and of finance, but really not make it dry like we're some sort of soulless drone that's out there. We're going to talk about balance sheet, profit and loss, cash flow, forecasting, KPIs. KPIs stand for key performance indicators. And they are going to be the precursor of how well your business is doing right then and there. And then what's the language that you use to be able to convey and to train and to make sure that everybody that's on your team at your club is doing the right things for the customer in mind. You start with the end in mind, and we really believe vehemently about lean management because it places the customer at the forefront of everything. And then what's the financial implication of it going forward? So that's really our agenda in a nutshell. And when we talk about accounting, it's the three pillars. It's your balance sheet, your cash flow, and your P&L. These are three separate reports that are married together that really give you an idea of how your club or your business is really doing. And Sean is when he looks at a club, Sean Frank, when he looks at a club, first thing that he goes to is the balance sheet. And that tells you the health of the organization. And then really your cash flow is, okay, what is coming in and what is going out today? And sometimes that's how clubs are operating. They're operating so short term that what is coming in is what is immediately going back out to fund the club. And then ultimately, how efficient does your club operate? How much profit does it generate at the end of the day when you throw in all of your revenue and you take out all of your expenses? What does that look like? And what does that profitability look like at the end of the month, at the end of the week, at the end of the quarter, at the end of the year? What's the percentage that goes along? And is that profit, that so-called, that EBIT number, is that enough to be able to fund the cash flow that's out there or take care of the balance sheet with some of the things that we're going to discuss today? It's really important. If you pull one of those legs out of that three-legged stool, you're going to fail. You're going to fall off like you're a drunken soldier there at the bar. So, balance sheet review. Sean, you want to talk a little bit about your long-term debt? Because I know you've had experience in turnaround some of the clubs that you've operated on the long-term debt side.
Yeah, and this is extremely important when you're looking at the balance sheet to look at that long-term debt, because this is almost solely a balance sheet item. Your payment doesn't show up on your P&L. The interest does, but your principal payment is not on there. It's important to know how this allows you to know what you need to spend, what you have to spend every month just to be able to open the doors to turn the lights on to be able to staff. So the long-term debt can get out of some places. It can get out of hand really fast, especially if you're just looking at your P&L. And then what's that long-term debt? Is it a mortgage for the clubhouse? Are they member notes? Did the club borrow money from its membership to fund itself? And are those even on the balance sheet? We've taken over clubs where you look at a balance sheet and it looks pretty good, and then you hear from the finance chair, oh, but that doesn't take into account the $1 million that we have to pay back to the members of the club that we borrowed a couple years ago. And if that, so what is there? What is that long-term debt? And that helps you figure out, what truly is my payment on a monthly basis just to satisfy what I've borrowed from other people. Then you have short-term debt as well. And I'll let Sean talk a little bit more about the short-term debt and some of the things that we've experienced with that.
Yeah. So, and one other thing about long-term debt is really long-term debt is the management decisions that you've made over the last 10 years. At the end of the day, that's really what it is. It just boils down to what are those decisions that got you to the point where you are currently right now. And like Sean was saying, that there's times and where we have seen boards that have come and gone where you have individual board members that may get on a board with an individual agenda that may drive that long-term debt up there. And we have seen that. We have seen that time and time again, where I'm going to get the greens done. When I get on that board, I'm going to get the greens done. And the club cannot afford to do something as something as like that. I'm going to, put $1 million down in the greens, or I'm going to build an additional wing onto the clubhouse, or I'm going to get the bunkers redone. And so it's the accumulation of all of those management decisions that get you to this particular point. And so really, running a club is different than running the U.S. government, where we just can't borrow ourselves out of debt. And so you have to really look and see how much debt does the club have. Right now, money is very inexpensive. It's cheap. And you really need to look at and say, okay, how, is there an opportunity there when it comes to your long-term debt? Your short-term debt is really, what have you done in essentially the last year? Have you maxed out your line of credit? There's clients that have had lines of credit. Have you maxed that out? Have you made, taken on capital leases so that your golf course maintenance can have the equipment that they need, or golf carts to run for the customers? Have you made any member advancements? There's the accounts payable. We have taken on clubs that have lived in that 120-day column. And what I mean by that is when you look at your accounts payable, your AP, you have 0 to 30, 30 to 60, 60 to 90, 90 to 120, 120 and above. We actually took over a club where almost all of it was in that 120 and above. It was, oh my gosh, we really, when we got there, it was bleeding like crazy. So you have to look at, when you're looking at your accounts payable, you don't want to see anything in the 120, the 90, the 60, even the 30 to 60. You really want to be current. That 0 to 30, you have to be current. Fiduciary, you have a fiduciary responsibility back to the board to be able to make sure that your AP is current, because those are the people that you're relying, your vendors that you're relying on. If your accounts payable is in the 120 column, you're funding your club on the backs of your vendors. Poor business decision, poor operating decisions. You haven't made the hard choices to be able to move that 120 into the 90, 90 into the 60, 60 into the 30, 30 into 0 to 30. Okay. The last thing we want to talk about is debt to revenue ratio. This is a very key point on what's the health of the organization. When you take the long-term debt and your short-term debt together, you take those two debts together. If that debt to ratio is greater than 1 to 2, meaning that, let's say if I generate $2 million at XYZ Country Club, and I have $1 million of combined long-term, short-term debt, you got a fighting chance. There's the light at the end of the tunnel. You can make this thing happen. And if you do not have that debt to revenue ratio, let's say that you are generating $1 million and you got $1 million in long-term combined, wow, you really have to look and say, everything that I'm doing, is it profitable for my club? And if the answer is no, cut it out, because it's not doing you darn bit of good. It's not the highest and greatest use of your resources and your assets if you're doing that. If you're staying open on a Tuesday night or a Tuesday morning because Mr. McGillicuddy has been at your club for 20 years and he's eaten breakfast there and he's the only guy supporting it, forget about it. Get rid of that service. Okay, it is not good for the health of your club. You're losing money. You're throwing good money after bad. So when you look at your debt to revenue ratio, those are absolutely critical for you to be able to sustain your club moving forward. When we say long-term debt, Sean is the master of this. And Sean, why don't you take him through how you've actually restructured some of the debt that when some of the turnarounds that you've been a part of. I remember the one property that you really restructured all of their debt.
Yeah, so the big thing was it came down to cash flow. We were spending too much money servicing debt, paying debt payments, that it really hampered the operation. And then it hampers the operation, makes it difficult to provide the service to attract new people to act new customers. So it was, how do we restructure this debt? How do we change this debt around? And it was negotiating with multiple banks, not just one bank, but multiple banks, so that you can pit people, you can kind of pit them against each other. You can say, well, they gave me a 15-year note at, 3.25%, and you're giving me a 15-year note at 4.25%, or whatever it happens to be. But it's restructuring that debt. And what we were able to do when we talked to multiple banks, or what I was able to do when I talked to multiple banks, I was actually able to reduce our monthly payment and shorten the life of the loan. So that way we would get out of a bad situation faster because we shortened the life of the loan. But we were also, because we were able to lower our interest rate by so much, by reducing the length of the loan, and because at the time prime was less, we were able to reduce our monthly payment, which freed up additional cash for us to fund the operation. So I tell you, the most important thing is to get into negotiations with people, and do it now. Do it sooner rather than later if you're in that boat, because prime just went up again. Okay, money right now is relatively inexpensive compared to what it's been, the last 30 years, but it's not going to stay this way forever. It is going to continue to go up. I think prime just went up to 4 or 4.125 just the other day. So if you're in a situation where you're spending more money than you think you ought to be, and it's hindering your cash flow, which is hindering your ability to run the operations, get in negotiations with multiple banks now.
And let me jump in on the bank situation. There are certain thresholds in which banks can be able to loan money. And to some degree, you're going to have a little bit more flexibility with your regional banks rather than the big five, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and so forth. For the most part, your regional operation banks are going to give you a little bit more favorable terms, especially if they're in town. So, this is where relationships matter. They do. Because they're going to see the value of your particular property a little bit greater than, say, a bank that's up in New York City, or a bank that's down there in Charlotte or Atlanta or something along those lines, and they're not right in your backyard. So that's definitely something that you need to be aware of. one other thing. Look, let's go ahead and you know, when we're saying about finance, it's really where the rubber meets the road. Do an audit. Do an audit of your golf course maintenance equipment. We went to a property where we saved literally $540,000 over the course of the lease, roughly about $100,000 of operating cash every single year for this particular lease. And the reason why is we did a maintenance matrix. And what is that? That is, how long does it take to mow the fairways? This is lean management at its best. How long does it take to mow the fairways? How long does it take to mow the greens? How long does it take to set up the golf course? How long does it actually take, and how many times in a week are you doing this? How many times a week are you raking the bunkers? How many times are you cutting the tees, fairways, roughs? And you take that and you put it all into, you know, your maintenance metrics, and then ultimately you're going to see, gosh almighty, do I have enough equipment? Do I have too much equipment? And if the equipment that I have, do I have enough people that are on my maintenance staff to be able to be in the equipment that I have? And what we found is that, you know what, they didn't have enough seats. They didn't have enough people, associates, to be able to put into the seats of the equipment that they had. And we were able to pick pieces off of that equipment, lower the monthly payment, and obviously that had a huge impact on their cash flow. And when you ask for your superintendent, tell them, hey, I want to see a chemical fertilization inventory. We took over a property where literally we went in there and looked at the chemical fertilization, and we looked at the maintenance equipment. And for the first 2 years, excuse me, we didn't buy a stitch of fertilizer. We didn't buy any pesticides. It was a $70,000 savings. $70,000. That's real money that we wound up saving. Now in year 3, we had to purchase, and we knew that going into it, but at least we did our due diligence with that. And then on the flip side of it, we reduced some of the maintenance equipment that was duplicate or triplicate or quadruplicate of some of that was on the lease that was not needed. Just was not needed. We didn't have enough people to put into the seats and into that. And so when you add all of that in, I mean, that is huge savings that's coming off of your balance sheet. That's, as soon as you're pulling that off of the liability side, all of a sudden that's flowing into your operations. Now, all of a sudden, from a customer standpoint, you're able to give significantly better service to the customer. Why? Because you're putting your money where your mouth is. You're looking through the lens of the customer when you do that. What impacts the customer on a daily basis? Sean does something with his capital inventory replacement cycle, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful to see because it's a long range plan. You want to talk about that?
The best thing to do, and I mean, shoot, if you live in an HOA, model it after your HOA's reserve study, because HOAs are required to do this, and they're required to have a reserve specialist go through and sign off on it, and they have to submit that to the state. And what they do, and what you ought to be doing, and what we do at our clubs, is we put together a list of every single asset that you have or that there is, and what the life cycle is, and when the next replacement term is, and you lay it all out for 25 years, and you say, okay, I have greens, tees, fairways, bunkers. These are all going to have to be redone. I have coolers, and I have freezers, and I have ovens and stoves. Those are all going to need to be replaced at some point. How long have I had the asset? What's the life expectancy of that asset? Is it 25 years on your roof? Is it 30 years on your roof? And how long has it been since that roof was replaced? Lay it all out with prices, future prices that you think it'll cost to replace it. Or do your research. Ask somebody to come in and give you the prices that it'll be in the future. And then that becomes your plan for replacement. And now it's, how am I going to save? Because what happens is, what happens to a lot of places is they get into a position where all of a sudden the roof starts leaking and they haven't been saving to replace it. So you need to start that savings plan based on your assets' expected life cycle. And I'm telling you, HOAs are phenomenal at this. I've lived in a couple HOAs, and model it after. They do it really well. model it after that. Put together a list of your assets. Don't be surprised by a leaky roof. Don't be surprised when your freezer needs to be replaced. Have it laid out and be saving for it now.
All right, awesome. Profit and loss. The second leg of the three-legged stool. Okay, profit and loss. Know your business. Your GM's got to know his business. I'm telling you, we can talk to a GM for about 15 or 20 minutes and ask him a series of questions, and within that 15 to 20 minutes, we know whether or not that they're blowing smoke, okay, or they actually know their business. And the reason why is how much, what's the dollar per round that you're generating? How much to spend per visit? What's your revenue drivers? How many rounds are you doing in a given day? What's your budgeted for rounds? What did you do last year? What's the difference? Why are you 2%, 3% less than where you were last year? How many covers are you doing in the restaurant? What's the percentage what's the number of covers that are coming back in regards to maybe quality that's coming in out of the restaurant? How many drinks are you selling? What's your average ticket price? What's your average ticket time that's going out of the restaurant? How much labor dollars are you spending per the amount of revenue that's being come? What's the percentages? If is that aspect of the business, if you're doing let's say you're running a restaurant, you're running a snack bar, is it profitable? Can you do it differently to make it profitable? What's your labor cost of revenue? What's your percentage of labor? See what I'm saying? In a 15-minute time frame, we can find out whether or not your general manager actually knows his business. And you've got to, in this day and age, in clubs, in hotels, in restaurants, it matters.
It truly matters. You need to know everything. And covers and dollar per cover, how much beverage per cover, how much food per cover. It's extremely, extremely important, because then you look at your menu mix and your overall menu pricing, and what happens if I reduce prices by $1 on all these items? Am I going to make up? Do I think there's the realistic opportunity for me to drive X number of covers additional just to make the same amount of revenue or exceed the revenue I was doing previously? Does that make sense? Or does it make sense to raise it by $1? Maybe I only lose X number of covers, or $2. You look at the mix, and if you don't know if you don't know your metrics, if you don't know the numbers, it makes those decisions very, very difficult, and you're making those decisions blindly.
Absolutely, absolutely. You measure what you treasure, and at Up to Par and Taylor Hospitality, we measure a lot. We treasure a lot, and this is something that we are experts in the industry of turning around clubs. We're experts in the industry of making clubs more profitable. If your club is barely making it in, we know that we'll be able to go in there and be able to turn a much greater profit.
Yeah, and give us a call. I mean, we'll do a free consultation. We'll take a look at it with you, give you a free consultation. So give us a call. We can help with this stuff. If you don't know it, we do. Give us a call.
Absolutely. So, the P&L side of things is really how efficient your current operation is running. And that is big things. And what are you doing to increase the revenue that's coming in and decreasing the expenses that are associated with it? Sometimes there's a direct correlation: more revenue, more expense, and then ultimately that may, that doesn't muster too much. But sometimes, it's that dispersion between revenue and expense, what's flowing down to the bottom. The
big thing I like to look at is the incremental profit.
Yes.
So for each additional dollar that I make beyond what I intended to make, how much additional profit beyond what I normally make do I flow to the bottom? So if I make, $50,000 more than what I budgeted, but I only make the same exact profit margin on those dollars, that's not great. You should, can a server get one more table? Can a banquet captain cover one more event? What can you do to make that incremental revenue much more profitable? I like to see 50% of that incremental revenue flow to the bottom.
So, you know, when you look at your when you look at your club, and this has always baffled me, is that you may have a club that's generating $1 million. You may have a club that's generating $1.5 million, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, 6 million, 8 million. There are clubs out there that generate 8, 9, 10 million, few and far between. But let's say your club generates $1.5 million. Who is responsible for generating sales? And if your answer is general manager, you'll never get there. You will never, ever get there to the promised land. Because at the end of the day, urgency and unimportant wins for the general manager. When Mrs. McGillicuddy comes in and she's lost her 9-wood cover and she walks into the GM's office, do you think the general manager is dismissing that interaction? Or is he spending the 20 to 30 minutes talking about the 9-wood cover that's out there somewhere and why somebody hasn't turned that cover in? You have to take sales seriously. And it has to be delegated. It's got to have somebody responsible, and it has to have somebody who is a professional salesperson in your organization. You're a $1.5 million organization, and I'm sorry, but sales is just not going to just show up on your doorstep. You got to go after it. You got to develop the relationships, and you got to make sure that those relationships ultimately fund your club.
You have to decide what is it that's funding your club. You need to know your business. If you don't know what truly is your business, you could be spinning your wheels going after the wrong stuff. Is it banquet events? And more specifically, what banquet events? Are you in celebrations of life? Are you in weddings? Are you in bar mitzvahs? And where are you spending your advertising dollars? Where are you focusing your sales efforts? And then what does it cost you to acquire the business? Everything that you spend to market for it, everything you spend for your salesperson, that is acquisition cost, whether it's membership sales, whether it's event sales. You have to determine what's your acquisition cost and what do they need to produce? How much more should they produce than what it costs you to pay for them, and it costs you to advertise. If you're spending $100,000 for a salesperson, are they booking you $500,000 worth of business?
I hope so.
If you're spending, I'll tell you, we have facilities where we've got salespeople we spend less than $100,000 for that produce $800,000, $900,000 worth of business, and we have salespeople that we spend, that it's 1-to-1. If your salesperson is doing 1-to-1, what's wrong? You need to know the acquisition cost and what is happening.
Absolutely. So that is the second leg on the 3-legged stool, profit and loss. We're going to the third and the final. Really, this is the now. When we talk about cash flow, we talk about the now. So we got the now. We have the midterm of the P&L, and then we have the long-term stability of the bank, the balance sheet to some degree. You can almost look at it that way, to in some aspect. Cash flow, cash is king. What do you have in the bank, and what bills do you have that are due today that are absolutely imperative? Big bills, payroll, huge bills, tax bills, payroll taxes. Third bill, property taxes, big bills, notes to the bank, your principal, your interest payments to the bank. Those are utilities. They are the big 5. You got to take care of the big 5 before you can move anything forward. So you put out an operating plan, and that's called your estimated guess of a budget. And that estimated guess should have some sort of historical track that goes along with it, as well as maybe some additional revenue that comes along with new programming, and marketing that's going out there. You got to spend the money in sales and marketing. I'm telling you, if you're not marketing and selling your club appropriately, forget about it. Forget about it. You will not make it. Okay. So when you put out your operating budget, and this is one of the properties that we manage up there in Northern Virginia, and there's the budget that's out there. Okay. 67% of the budget has been achieved into 23% of the month for golf. 39% of that budget has been achieved in the 23% of that month for food and beverage. So when you add everything together, this facility is ahead of plan. It will have more, ultimately it will show up into the bank account. It will have more money than what was initially anticipated in this snapshot, provided that all the other months didn't make all the withdrawals from it. So, you have to take care, look at your big things, because you got to say, okay, you got to pay your people and you got to pay them well, because that your club is only as good as your people. And then you got to look at those big other four factors. And how is that going to impact your cash that's in the bank? And it's what is coming in and what am I spending today to take care of all of my big five plus my vendors going forward.
And I'm gonna go on a little bit different thing. I know it's not here, but this is where budgeting and your plan, your estimated best guess, it is important, like Sean said previously, that you are doing this based on history. You're not doing this based on a whim, based on wants, based on what you need. You're putting together something that's realistic, it's achievable. Because if you're not hitting your budget numbers and you're going down, you're missing your budget every month, that affects your cash flow, which affects who you can pay. Now you've got to make operational decisions that you don't want to make. So know your numbers inside and out. Know the history so you can put together things that are realistic and achievable. You've got to pay all these people. If you're like, oh, well, I need, I'm doing my revenue to be $2 million this year because that's what I need in order to do everything that I want. Well, that's not how you put together a budget. Put together the budget based on history, based on trends, based on your assumptions, and be realistic and achievable. Though that's the number one thing, because you have all these other things. This is ultimately that budget is going to allow you to put together your cash flow budget. And when you've got your cash flow budget, that has to fund your payroll, that has to fund all of your bills. If you don't hit that budget, something's got to give.
Yeah.
In order for you to pay your bills and pay your people.
So this is a daily dash. We call it a daily dash. This goes out every single day for all the clubs, for all the department managers that we operate. So if I'm a golf pro at this particular property, I'm seeing how my department's doing. If I'm a food and beverage banquets person, I'm seeing how my department is doing. I'm seeing how the overall property is doing. You have to get your managers engaged with the financial discussion of the club, so when you do make difficult decisions, that they fully understand why that you're doing it. Not because you're not a good person, but at the end of the day, business is business, and sometimes you have to make really difficult decisions because based upon the financials of the club, and that some of the reasons why that you're making those decisions. This is another report that we generate. This is literally our daily cash report. So when you look at that, we know how many checks are outstanding, what checks are outstanding, what hasn't cleared out of the bank. There's a time delay when you write a check and you send it to a vendor, or and all of a sudden it may take 2 or 3 days before it clears out of your particular account. What's the current balance? How much do we have available today? What's anticipated that we're going to have on the payables? What's the anticipated that we're going to have in payroll? What's the anticipated that we have in deposits that we've received that are in transit between what we've collected on the daily receipts all the way going into the bank? And how does that all look? What's our projections on revenue? And Sean's going to talk a little bit about forecasting because that's an important part of cash flow. And then where are we going to be at the end of the month? And if at the end of the month, what's that balance going to kind of look like at the end of the month? Then I can make solid business decisions on who gets paid, when it gets paid, and so forth. And you know, you have to be able to manage this. You have to be due diligent. Club business, hotel business, like it or not, you know, we talk big numbers, but at the end of the day, it's a nickel dime business. You save a nickel here, you save a dime there, and then you bring in a dime, you spend a nickel. Wow, you know what? You're moving that boulder down the road, and you're making headway. And your managers that are operating the departments have to be fully engaged in the financial language that you have to run your club. Okay, then obviously that you get buy-in from them, and then to a certain degree, all of a sudden you start to see the club really start to take a whole nother culture, and you start to see that the club is, you know, making ground on the financial health of the club itself. Forecasting.
So this is a forecast that we use at a club in Northern Virginia, and this is Banquets. We said earlier, know your business. We know that Banquets support this F&B department. They are the main support. They are the thing that drives it, and we have to make sure that we're hitting our budget, exceeding our budget, and that we're running them profitably. So we put together, this is actually a 2018 forecast, and this was put together. We put that together in the beginning of 2017 so that we can start tracking 2018 revenue, because we're going to be doing contracts for events from the time, you know, Christmas and, you know, holiday parties are happening. They're contracting for their next Christmas or holiday party, hopefully within 30 days of the previous holiday party. So we're putting this stuff together as soon as possible. And what you can see is, hopefully you can see all these numbers. I know that on a $780,000 top line revenue budget, basically at $740,000 on the books, this was done in September of 2017 for 2018's budget. So I know the months I'm going to be short, at least right now. I know the months that we're going to be ahead, at least right now. And things change. There are ebbs and flows. But I can tell you that this gives you the opportunity to communicate ahead of time with your staff, gives you the opportunity to communicate ahead of time with your boards, the owner, if it's not member owned, if it's a hotel or a restaurant or a facility that's privately owned. Say, hey, look, January, February, I can tell you right now, we're going to be light. We're probably going to miss budget, but we're going to make up what we miss in March, April, May. Then we're going to go backwards hard in June. I'm going to tell you, we're going to go backwards hard in June, but we're going to more than make up for it in July, August, September. And I can tell you, as of right now, this facility has already exceeded their budgeted revenue for 2018 on the books contract. And when I mean on the books, I mean they have a signed contract and have paid a deposit. You should not be taking people at their word. This is business. This is somebody else's business that they own, or your business that you own, and you can't go on promises and hopes and wishes and dreams. You need to go on real guarantees. There needs to be attrition clauses. There needs to be final counts. There needs to be, you know, deadlines on when things are due. You need to hold, just like they're going to hold you accountable for the service aspect, and they're going to hold you accountable for delivering what you sell them and you tell them you're capable of delivering. You need to hold them accountable for meeting their obligations to the business, providing you with accurate accounts, providing you with accurate, you know, menus in enough time if they're selecting a menu, providing you with deposits in a timely manner. These need to be guaranteed, and you need to be tracking. You need to be able to communicate effectively with everybody and know where you're going to be compared to budget, so you can make, hopefully you don't have to make any operational decisions because you're not coming in towards your budget because you decided you didn't want to budget realistically and achievable. If you budget realistically and achievable and you meet these numbers, then you don't have to explain them. You may have some variations on when you set it, when you estimated it was going to come on based on history and what's actually happening this year. Maybe a brides for some reason are booking October this year because they like the fall foliage when they all booked September the previous year, or maybe there's some special thing going on in April and people decide they want to plan an event around this special celebration in the town or the city you manage your club in. Not everything's going to be the same every year, but be realistic, be achievable, and track it so so you can communicate effectively and you can make operational decisions. Do I need to hire more people because I have more business and I have the staff to accommodate than I have the staff that can run the business, all of that? Or do I have too much staff and I'm not going to be able to pay them appropriately because I don't have the business coming in? What operational decisions do you need to make? And you cannot make those in advance in enough time for your business to be effective if you're not tracking it daily, weekly, monthly.
So, Sean, you make a really good point. This particular property, and we'll just stay right here for a second. This particular property, this forecast is a running forecast. It literally is 16 at this particular stage. This snapshot, it was 16 months in advance. Okay, so let's think about this. 16, and it's projecting out the next 16 months. Because what you don't see is it's done in September. You don't see the October forecast, November forecast, December forecast of the existing year. Okay?
Correct.
Going into next year, this particular property has a budget of $780,000, in which we have a salesperson driving that. See the equation? We have somebody responsible for that $780,000 worth of sales going into the club. Okay, we know at $780,000, we have a lion's share of the club's revenue taken care of. The beauty of this is that this particular salesperson has done a fabulous job. She's at 95% of her 2018 number. And you know what? She's got a whole nother 12 months to blow this budget out of the water and to make this club that much more profitable. Okay? So obviously the marketing decisions of where this club is spending their marketing dollars is doing the right things.
See, the idea is if your salesperson is relying on 100% cold calls, you're never going to make it. You have to spend some dollars. You've got to get butts in the seats in front of that salesperson. Just like you need butts on the seats in an airline, you need to get people in front of your salesperson, because they're not going to be 100%. They're not going to be 100%. Okay. What is their conversion rate? What percentage of the leads that come in do they convert to a sale? And then once you determine what that percentage is, you know how many leads you need to start getting in front of them,
right,
in order for you to have the amount of business that you want. So where are you spending that money? And then what's your competition doing? You have to know what your competition is doing. If your competition is advertising in these locations and you're not, you're losing the business of everybody who goes to those advertising sites. If you're advertising in places that your competition is also advertising, how are you making sure that they see you before they see them? I tell you, there are lots of websites where you can pay a little bit extra and make sure that you're planted at the top. There's places where you can go where you can you can make sure you have more qualified leads coming in your door. And I'm telling you, you do your research, not only on your competition and where they're doing their advertising, but also on new places to advertise. Because if you can be the first one in the new hot spot, you're going to get those leads before anyone else does.
Absolutely. So one more thing, obviously we are metric focused. We have gamified the operation of a club or of a hotel, because you know what? We put it on a scorecard. We are all about the results. Our value system is called ECHO Teamwork, and E stands for execution. You can talk about the 30,000 level, but also at the end of the day, you got to do it. You got to put your mouth where your hands are, okay? You got to execute on saying what you can do. C stands for caring, H stands for honesty, O stands for ownership. And so we have this framework, and then what we call echo teamwork, where it really revolves around the entire team, your entire team that's at the club, your entire team that's there at corporate, your entire sales team, your entire marketing team, your entire operations team, your entire HR team. You know, you have all of these components that are there that are effectively running your property. And finally, we have a language that we use at all of our properties, and it has the roots within lean management, and it looks through the lens of the customer. If I am a customer, if I am a member, if I am a guest that's coming through our properties, what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, is it providing value to me? And if it's not providing value to me as the customer, the end user, then we really need to look at it. We really need to look at, are we putting our resources in the right buckets to make sure that the experience is second to none? The experience is better than before. And this is so incredibly important because metrics, financials matter. At the end of the day, the experience that you're giving your customer shows up on your P&L sheet, shows up on your balance sheet, shows up in the cash that you're generating at the club. And lean thinking really does define the values that you're providing, the benefits to the customer, because anything else, they don't care about. It's waste. It's absolute waste. And so you got to take your processes that you have, define those processes, look to see if there's waste within those processes. And if there's waste, you got to cut it out. You know, you got to take away. And we look at everything. And that's one of the things that we do as a, not only as a management company, but also as a consulting company, where we would come in and we would look at your processes and see, wow, oh my gosh, how much waste that you have here and that you're spending on good money after bad, and it has zero value for the guest, for your member, for your customer. Zero value. Yet you're continually doing it. And that's the reason why you're continually doing it. It's because you haven't mapped it out and seen how wasteful that particular process is and how much that ultimately shows up. You know, maybe it shows that you have so much waste within your organization that you have 2 or 3 or 4 more people that you can hire that could be more customer centric, that would be able to increase the experience that you have. And that's something that we do religiously. That's something that we talk about. We train our management team to be able to do. All of our management team essentially is trained within lean, and then also within Six Sigma. So we got a couple of questions that were emailed here. It says, what do you do when you determine a club does not have the funds?
Good, Sean, where's that question? Who sent that question?
That actually came looks like from Frank in Tampa, Florida. So
Frank,
what
thank you very much for the question.
Absolutely, Frank. Hopefully it's not your club.
Yeah.
You know, so a couple of things with that. You really need to look at, you go back and you say, okay, again, what does the balance sheet look like? Do you have the opportunity? Can you make it for the next year? And can you make it for the next 18 months? And can you make it for the next 2 years? And in that 2-year time frame, can you be able to generate enough funds to start knocking down your debt? If your debt to revenue ratio is out of alignment, that's something that you're going to have to come to grips with. Sometimes the best and the highest, most valuable use of the property is sticking a for sale sign out front. And that's the cold hard truth. However, there are times where you can look at a club and say, okay, if I can get my debt in alignment, if I can work with my vendors and my creditors to get it to where I think that I can live to fight another day, if I can make better operational decisions, that I'm reducing my expenses and increasing my profitability to be able to take care of some of this debt, that ultimately is going to help me fund my capital moving forward. You know, and what's the team that I have? You know, you know, you got to look at who's on your bus. Is there a misalignment in compensation? I hate to say this, but sometimes we've looked at clubs and we scratch our head and we say, wow, the club generates $600,000 and you're paying your superintendent $120,000. Something's not right. It's almost like the old Sesame Street. Which one of these doesn't belong with the other? You know, you got to make hard decisions, and they're really challenging and tough.
And I think you know the first step is, do you know so you realize you don't have the funds. Okay. Well, how well do you know your business? What's dragging you down? Is it debt? Is it operations? What's dragging you down? And then, do you have enough cash flow how long can project your cash flow? How long can you survive? And make your decision based on what's dragging you down. If it's operations that are dragging you down, what changes can you make operationally to turn it around? If it's debt that's dragging you down, what changes can you make from a debt? Can you restructure your debt? Are you capable of restructuring your debt? That would be the first step for me. Is I'd be saying, determine what's dragging you down.
So we have another question from Bill from, looks like down in the Hilton Head, South Carolina region. It says, do you engage with properties you feel do not have the funds? Well, Bill, excellent question. Really, the thing is we do due diligence. We look at, you know, we're saying, hey, we'd love to talk with you, you know, Bill. So why don't you give us a call and see, and see, you know, we can at least go through your balance sheet, your P&Ls, and as well as your cash flow, and get a pretty good idea where you are within that 30-minute call. And it's free. Give us a ring, 540-464-4653, or, you know, look us up online at uptoparmanagement.com. We will look at it and see, you know, can we help? There's times in which we think that the management idea is not the best for you, where we're doing consulting. And then there's times in where we think that, you know, hey, your management is much better than the consulting of it, aspect of it. So that's definitely something that we look at. This is Steve. Steve is from, looks like North Carolina, the Durham area. How do you turn around a facility that doesn't have the funds? Again, Steve, give us a call. You know, we need to determine whether or not you have the funds or you don't have the funds. Are you, you know, funding operations that are not profitable for you and are not the highest and greatest use of the resources of that particular property? And if the answer is no, or if the answer is yes, then you got to stop it. You got to stop it. You got to really make difficult decisions that are there and stop it. You have to fund things that will turn an ROI for you, that will turn a profit, so that you can reinvest those funds back into your property. This is Mike. Mike is looks like Mike's from a club again down in Southwest Florida, down in Naples area. Mike asks, what is the number one thing you look in determining if a facility can make it or turn around? Sean, what do you look at when you do your consulting? You say, okay, what is the number one thing you look at?
Number one thing is balance sheet. And what do? The first thing I do is I quickly scan bank account balances. Do you have cash? How much cash? And then I go straight to long and short-term debt, because I want to know, how much cash do I have? What, you know, I can estimate, what am I paying on a monthly basis, just so I can open the doors. That's absolutely, to me, that's where I go first. Is I scan the balances in the accounts and I go straight to the liabilities. I want to know if there's even the possibility that we're going to be able to, you know, make it for a period of time based on the cash that we have and based on what our, you know, fixed liabilities are going to be.
So if you have additional questions, don't hesitate to drop us a note, give us a ring. We've said that several times, 540-464-4653. You can email me directly, Sean.Taylor@uptoparmanagement.com, or you can email Sean, Sean.Frunk. He spells it a little differently than I do. He's SAUN.Frunk, FRONK, @uptoparmanagement.com. And before we leave, obviously, we want to be able to help clubs that are out there. We're saying that we'll give you a free consultation of your clubs, look at your financials, give you some suggestions of, hey, these are some of the big red flags, but these are things that we see maybe some operational inefficiencies or opportunities to generate more revenue to help you club. Look out for a link in a follow-up email from this particular webinar, and give us a call. We'd love to be able to talk with you. We've helped hundreds of clubs that are out there across the United States. We have an unbelievable team of industry experts in regards from club operations, finance, to human resources, to food and beverage. Guys, your food and beverage department can make or break you. To golf agronomy, fabulous director of agronomy, and Jeff Carlstrand, that's out there. We're here to help. We're here to help you really to make that next step. Make 2018 your best year. Make your club really perform like the way that it's supposed to perform. Our upcoming webinar is about culture and training. We believe this inside and out. We want to positively impact others, and that first and foremost is our associates that work with us every single day here at Up to Par Management, as well as Taylor Hospitality. So we are really happy that you're here. We loved the conversation that we had, as well as the questions from all over. Looks like all over the Southeast there. Some great questions, especially for the guys down there in Florida. So really looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing you again on February 13th. Connect with us on LinkedIn. Connect with Sean. Connect with myself on LinkedIn. Very active user out there on LinkedIn, and talk. We got all kinds of nuggets that are going out there, and we should have some great insight. Do want to say thank you, and thank you for coming. Appreciate it. And if you want to talk with us, don't hesitate to give us a call or drop us an email. Have a wonderful day, and make 2018 great.